Today's video is brought to you by Surfshark, the affordable VPN service. More on them in a bit. Fiction is replete with examples of incredible heroic animals, from the littlest hobo and Lassie to fantastic Mr. Fox and Hazel from Watership Down. Fictional animals have captured the hearts and minds of people both young and old ever since storytelling began. But it is not just the world of fiction that can bring us tales of awe-inspiring resilience, bravery, and loyalty. Throughout history, there have been many stories of animals who truly did go above and beyond. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at some of these animals and their exceptional accomplishments. Originally named Oscar after the letter O from the phonetic alphabet, which was used as the code for man overboard, this cat truly did appear to have 9 lives. As the story goes, he started his life as a stowaway on board the Bismarck, and in May 1941, when the Bismarck sank, he was transferred to the HMS Cossack after being found floating on a piece of wood. Oscar would remain on board the Cossack as a sort of mascot while it conducted convoy escorts in the North Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea. Unfortunately, on the 24th of October 1941, the Cossack would sustain serious damage during a U-boat attack. Although attempts were made to return the Cossack to Gibraltar, it would ultimately be abandoned en route. Oscar was discovered among the survivors that were rescued by HMS Legion and would subsequently be transferred to the HMS Ark Royal. It was at this point that he acquired the nickname Unsinkable Sam. Although he did appear to be unsinkable, his miraculous powers of survival did not seem to be able to protect the ships on which he traveled, and on the 14th of November 1941, the Ark Royal was severely damaged by yet another torpedo attack. Although attempts were made to tow the ship back to Gibraltar, this would ultimately prove unsuccessful, and she would eventually be abandoned approximately 30 miles offshore. Oscar, along with all but one of the Ark Royal's crew, was rescued by HMS Lightning. Shortly thereafter, Oscar was transferred to the HMS Legion, where he spent the remainder of his time at sea. After enjoying a brief stay in the offices of the Governor of Gibraltar, Unsinkable Sam was transferred one final time to the Belfast Home for Sailors, where he is said to have lived out the remainder of his life, both happy and permanently dry. On the 16th of October 1996, a mother and a 3-year-old boy were enjoying a day out at the Brookfield Zoo in Chicago. The day appears to have proceeded just like any other visit. That is until the family reached the gorilla enclosure. At that time, the zoo was home to a small tribe of 7 western lowland gorillas, and the young family stopped to spend some time observing their behavior. It was at this point that the simple trip to the zoo almost became fatal for the young boy. While attempting to get a closer look at the gorillas, he slipped and fell 25 feet straight down into the enclosure. The fall resulted in the child breaking his hand, being knocked unconscious, and bleeding profusely from the side of his face. Understandably, the watching crowd and the boy's mother were terrified of what might happen next. But in this case, they need not have worried. While the rest of the gorillas appeared confused and uncertain as to what they should do next, Binti, with her own child riding on her back, approached the child and gently cradled him in her arms before carrying him to the door of the enclosure, whereupon she gently laid him on the ground and retreated to a safe distance so that he could be retrieved by paramedics. Moreover, this is not the first time that gorillas have behaved in a similar fashion. In 1986, under similar circumstances, Jambo, a 400-pound silverback gorilla, stood guard over an unconscious 5-year-old boy who had fallen into his enclosure at the zoo on the island of Jersey. As the 5-year-old lay on the ground, Jambo stroked his back while ensuring that none of the other gorillas got too close. When the boy regained consciousness and began to cry, the silverback calmly led the other gorillas back to a small hut in the corner of their enclosure so that the young boy could be retrieved. Although Jambo passed away in 1992, Binti, who is actually the niece of Coco the sign language gorilla, is happily living in the same zoo alongside her daughter and granddaughter. Now, if you're concerned about protecting your online privacy and security, then Surfshark is the solution for you. When you use Surfshark's VPN service, your internet connection is encrypted, which means that your online activity is hidden from any third parties that might be monitoring you. Additionally, Surfshark hides your IP address, which makes it more difficult for websites to track your online activity or for hackers to target your device. Not only does Surfshark protect your privacy, but it also allows you to access content that may be restricted in your location. That means you can explore the internet without any limitations, and and enjoy a truly unrestricted browsing experience. But that's not all. Surfshark is also incredibly affordable. Right now, you can get Surfshark at surfshark.deals/sideprojects, and if you use the promo code SIDEPROJECTS, you'll get an amazing 83% off and 3 extra months for free. And another advantage of using Surfshark when you shop online is that it can help you find the cheapest prices for the products you want. It can also give you access to online stores that might not normally be available in your country, especially useful if you're looking for products that aren't available in your country, or maybe wanting to get a lower price from somewhere else. Surfshark's encryption and IP masking capabilities help you protect your personal information and prevent online retailers from using your data to target you with higher prices. So why wait? Protect your privacy at surfshark.deals/sideprojects and use the promo code SIDEPROJECTS to get 83% off and 3 extra months for free. And now back to today's video. Described most often as either a bull terrier or a Boston terrier, Stubby began his life living on the streets of New Haven, Connecticut, where he would scavenge for scraps of food. During July 1917, Stubby befriended a young soldier named Robert Conroy, who was, at that time, engaged in basic training within the grounds of Yale University. Stubby is reported to have had an exceptionally friendly temperament and quickly became a huge hit with other members of the 102nd Infantry Regiment. The men would share their supplies with him, and by the time the unit was deployed to France, they had taught a great number of things to him, including the ability to raise his paw in salute. When the time came for the unit to depart, Conroy and the other men could not bear the thought of Stubby returning to the streets, and so, under the cover of darkness, Conroy smuggled him aboard the ship. When the dog was discovered on board by a commanding officer, Conroy and the others believed that the game was up. However, after Stubby calmly saluted the officer, a gesture that is reported to have rendered the man speechless, he immediately became the official mascot of the Yankee Division. It was not until the unit arrived in France that Stubby's incredible abilities were completely revealed. Due to his far superior sense of hearing, the dog was frequently able to alert the soldiers to the incoming danger of artillery shells long before they would have heard them themselves. His sense of smell was also particularly useful on the battlefield at that time. On more than one occasion, Stubby alerted his regiment to incoming mustard gas attacks. This advanced warning gave the men enough time to put on their gas masks, undoubtedly saving many lives. Stubby would also prove himself to be an invaluable asset when it came to recovering injured soldiers. Several members of the regiment would go on to claim that the only reason they'd survived at all was that Stubby had located them and drawn attention to their location so that they could be rescued. However, perhaps Stubby's greatest achievement is the one that was recorded in his obituary in the New York Times. To quote, "Hearing a sound in the stillness of the night, the dog who guarded sleeplessly stole out of the trenches and recognized a German. Attempts by the German to deceive the dog were futile. Seizing his prisoner by the breeches, Stubby held on until help arrived." For this act of bravery, Stubby received the Iron Cross that had formerly belonged to the German spy that he'd captured. At the end of the war, Stubby returned to America in the company of Conroy. When he arrived, he was presented with numerous accolades, including a Medal for Heroism from the Humane Education Society. Throughout the rest of his life, he would go on to meet with 3 US presidents, Woodrow Wilson, Calvin Coolidge, and Warren G. Harding, and would also become the official mascot of Georgetown University, where Conroy would obtain his law degree. Stubby would eventually pass away peacefully at Conroy's home in 1926, but tales of his incredible exploits are still told to this day. Real Gindon, a young boy from Ontario, Canada, was on a camping trip with his parents. The family frequently holidayed at this particular location, mainly because the nearby lake provided excellent fishing opportunities. One afternoon, Real's parents decided to take their small fishing boat out onto the lake. On this occasion, Ariel elected simply to watch them from the shore rather than go with them, and this decision would almost certainly save his life. As Ariel played by the shore, glancing up occasionally to wave to his parents, tragedy struck. As he watched, the small fishing boat flipped over and both his parents were thrown into the icy water. Heartbreakingly, the young boy could do nothing but watch his parents struggle to return to shore before eventually succumbing to the freezing temperatures and vanishing forever beneath the water. Although it is almost impossible to understand just exactly what Real was going through, it is incredibly impressive that even whilst attempting to deal with what he had just experienced, he maintained enough presence of mind to realize that he himself was now in extreme danger. He knew that if he could not find a place of safety soon, that it would be highly unlikely that he would survive. With this in mind, he set off in the direction that he believed the nearest town to be in. However, as he walked, darkness began to fall, and he realized that he had no other choice but to stop for the night and attempt to get some sleep on the cold, hard ground. As he lay shivering and partly delirious from both physical and mental exhaustion, he felt a warm, furry animal lie down against his back. At the time, he believed it must be some sort of dog. When he finally awoke the next morning, it was discovered that 3 beavers were lying both around and over his body, and it was their combined body heat that had allowed him to survive the sub-zero temperatures. Reel continued on his journey and was eventually rescued later that same day. A doctor would later state that due to the partially frigid temperatures that night, it was incredibly unlikely that Reel would have survived without the intervention of his unlikely saviors. On September the 11th, 2001, Michael Hingson, a 51-year-old blind man, and his yellow Labrador Retriever guide dog Roselle were preparing for what they believe would be a normal day at work in the 78th floor of the World Trade Center. Nothing could have possibly prepared them for what lay ahead. At 8:45 a.m., the first of 2 planes would crash into the towers, and inside, pandemonium began to reign. Inside Hingson's office, one of his colleagues, David Frank, shouted, "We gotta get out of here right now. You don't understand. You can't see it." In an interview given 20 years later, Hingson recalled that as soon as the first plane hit the building, Roselle came out from underneath his desk, where she'd been taking a nap, yawning and wagging her tail. "The problem wasn't what I was seeing, it was what David wasn't seeing." Roselle wasn't giving any kind of fear reaction. And the clue that I took away from this was that whatever was going on, it wasn't such an imminent threat to us that we couldn't try to evacuate in an orderly way. To that end, Frank, Hingson, and Roselle began leading people towards the stairs. Upon entering the stairwell, the smell of jet fuel was almost overpowering. Roselle began to lead the group down 1,460 steps to ground level. As they descended, the stairwell began to fill with smoke, and the group was joined by burn victims who had managed to escape from floors close to the impact zone. As visibility decreased, Roselle continued to calmly lead the group downwards until they eventually arrived in the lobby. At this point, policemen with megaphones shouted to those inside that they should not leave through the main entrance due to the danger caused by falling debris and bodies. Roselle took all of this in her stride and was able to lead Hingson and the others to an alternative exit and then onto a nearby subway station where they were able to shelter from the debris, smoke, and dust caused by the collapsing towers. Hingson is in no doubt that Roselle saved more than just his life that day. She played a huge part in both assisting people through the exceptionally challenging conditions and keeping them calm enough to continue. Although guide dogs are exceptionally highly trained animals, there is no possible training that could have prepared Roselle for what happened that day, and her unbelievable ability to perform so flawlessly in such an environment has made her one of the most famous dogs of her kind. Roselle died from an autoimmune disorder at the age of 13, surrounded by Hingson, his wife Karen, and several friends near their home outside of San Francisco.